Great. Okay, so you went to Montcalm.
Went to Montcalm, and when I finished grade 6, the school board was having financial difficulties and decided to speed things up. So they decided that special students could take grades 7, 8, and 9 in 2 years rather than 3.
Okay.
And I was sent to a special school through John McDonald, where there was 15 others, 10 girls, 5 boys. We had a special training session for 2 years. So I ended up finishing junior high school when I was 11. When I was 12, I went to high school. When I was 13, I went to grade 11. But the school board decided that I was too young, and so they kicked me out for a year. And I went to work when I was 14 on a farm as a farm boy for $5 a month and board.
$5 a month. And room? No.
Yeah, room and board.
Room and board.
Yeah.
Okay.
I spent most of 1935 doing that. Came back to Winnipeg.
So, if I could ask, what would you do with $5 a month? What did you do with it? You save it?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Not very much.
Something. Yeah.
But I don't even know if I ever got it. I'm not sure.
You don't know whether they even gave it to you?
That's right.
I see.
But anyway, when I came back to Winnipeg and wanted to take engineering, they told me that I didn't have enough background in the sciences. So I took a year of science, which I was taught chemistry and physics, and calculus and so on. Entered engineering in 1936.
Did you love it?
I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I was very good at it. I won several scholarships and graduated when I was 20 with a degree in civil engineering in 1941. The previous summer, in 1940, I'd worked as a junior engineer on building airports for the British Wealth Commonwealth Scheme. And there I met a senior RCF officer who suggested that I should join the Air Force and become a works officer, building and repairing airports. So in the spring of 1942, I went to the recruiting station and they said, yes, we're going to have a class of an entrance for works officers sometime next fall. Come back then. And when I went back then, they decided that they'd already filled it up. And there was no room for me. But they were recruiting radar officers or RDF officers, radio direction find officers. And because I'd been a radio,
So RDF, that became radar.
it became radar.
Radio direction finders.
That's right.
Okay.
And because I'd been a radio amateur for a number of years and had quite an extensive background in radio and electronics, they recruited me as a student of what eventually became radar. And they sent me to McGill University for 6 months in Montreal, where I studied electronics and radios. When I was finished that, they decided that because of my background in engineering, that I should go and join the RCAF, or RAF rather, delegation in Washington, D.C., and go to Texas to train with the American Marines and Navy on anti-submarine warfare. So I spent 3 or 4 months doing that in Corpus Christi, Texas.
How did you like that?
I liked it. The weather was good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it very much. Did it reasonably well.
Yeah.
Then they decided they would send me overseas. And they sent me to Halifax to take a boat. But when I got to the embarkation station in Halifax, they said, you got to go back to Montreal because they want to fly you over. They're very anxious that you get there in a hurry. So I came back to Montreal. The airplane came up from Texas, B-25, with a Norwegian crew. We flew from Montreal to Gander, Newfoundland, and took off from Gander and flew over Greenland and Iceland landed in Prestwick, Scotland in the summer of 1943. Then he decided that we were having a problem with the local radar, which was chain home long. In other words, it looked over the horizon to pick up aircraft taking off from airfields in France.
Grandad, can I stop you? Why did they call it chain home long radar?
Well, there was a chain of these all around
Okay, up and down the coast.
down the coast of Britain, along the south coast, around Dover, up through the road north.
And home was like it's Britain.
And it's almost like it's Britain, and there's a long range.
Okay.
But the problem was that the Germans were sending aircraft below the radar. Because the long-range radar was very high up, big towers. And they decided that I should head a team looking around the east coast of Britain, England, and Scotland to locate sites where they could put up parabolic antennas and little low-rise radar to detect these aircraft coming over from Norway. Because at that time, in 1942 or 43, Germany occupied Norway.
Right.
And had quite a large air force flying back and forth across the North Sea.
So, were you ever? It just occurred to me, if you're on the coast and you're surveying sites or looking at sites, and then you'd call the survey crew in if you picked a site where you wanted to build one of these. Did you ever see the German planes coming over your heads? And they were on their way to bomb or do whatever,
That's right, yeah.
etc. So you'd be sitting there and you'd see them go right over your heads, and you knew that they were undetected at that point.
That's right.
Okay.
Anyway, we did that for a few months in the fall of 1943. And in December of 43, they were beginning to talk about an invasion of France in the summer of 1944.
So everybody knew that there was probably going to be an invasion of some kind.
That's right.
Okay. High and low. It wasn't just the top. Everybody, that was understood. That was there. I guess the Germans knew that was going to happen too.
But they didn't know where.
Right.
So anyway, the RCAF, who had a number of bomber stations in Yorkshire, decided to bring in all their Canadian radar people and set them up in Bomber Command in Yorkshire. And I was sent to be the radar officer for 428 Squadron at Linden on Ouse.
What does that mean, Grandad? If you're the radar officer for a squadron, are you stationed where all the planes are located?
Right.
And then you detect incoming German planes? Is that what you're?
Partially, but we also serviced, installed, and trained the operators of the equipment.
So were those operators who would end up in planes?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because they had. I mean, the planes were flying around with radar in them.
That's right.
I see. Okay.
Well, anyway, because I had been trained in American radar, they decided that I should go to the factory that built British radar, which was a company called EMI, Electrical Mechanical Industries, in a little town east of London called Hayes, Middlesex.
Okay. North of Heathrow.
North of Heathrow. But they had no accommodation for officers. So what they did was billet the officers in people's houses who had a spare bedroom. And I was billeted at number 5 Little Road,
Okay.
where I lived with Mr. and Mrs. Harris, who was a plumber,
Yep.
and their daughter, Jean Winifred Harris, who worked as a secretary to the safety officer in Imperial Chemical Industries, which produced anti-aircraft shells.
ICI,
ICI.
which used to make paint for a paint store that I worked at in Vancouver.
Probably did, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, she also, as part of her job, did the job of measuring the output of the industry to make sure that the various aircraft shells were the right size. And she carried around a set of no-go and go gauges and checked the output.
So you'd put it on the shell. If it didn't fit, it was a no-go.
That's right.
If it fit, you could.
Pass it on.
Interesting.
Anyway,
These things. Okay. I was going to ask if they ever blew up on anybody, but
don't think so.
they were designed not to.
That's right. But anyway, as a result, I had breakfast, and had supper with the Harrises for lunch at the factory. So every morning I had breakfast with Jean and every supper.
Huh.
And she was also a fire warden.
Okay.
Well, now what a fire warden did, because in addition to the EMI factory in Hayes, there was a factory building airplanes. Quaker Oats had a factory building food processing. And the Germans would send these aircraft over at supper time and fireball in the area. And the fire wardens...
Were they trying to hit these factories, I guess?
That's right.
Yep.
The fire wardens would walk around and check where the incendiaries landed. And there were little telephone stations around that would phone the fire department to make sure that the fire department came and put them out.
Okay.
So, and as a member of the armed forces, I had to accompany Jean on these tours. Every night we went out for 2 or 3 hours, running around.
So this is interesting. Hang on a moment here. We're going to make sure that this thing's working, and then we're going to ask about this quite a bit. Let's see here. So let's see. 11. Okay.